usually, it was always returned to me, so two trips to get something for Christmas, I thought was a little ridiculous.
Well, we started getting little things, you know, like mittens or, you know, a new scarf or something that they had something to open, but nothing that was very consequential, so.
It works so well. I'm like,
Hey, what you can do too.
When did Jimmy Carter turn 100?
Confidentiality. Just put on.
I had his birthday. Where is that?
Was it during the summer?
Yes. It wasn't very long ago.
You can
Yeah.
look at it on your own screen and you can see it goes in the printer.
oh, you are.
It's 10 cents a page.
Yeah.
And it's black and white.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Thanks for telling us that. The Wizard Falls.
Or, my house, and I will ensure that confidentiality, and you can go into the print room in my house and do it. Yep. You're always welcome.
A little chilly out there, isn't it?
It is. See what tomorrow brings.
Yeah.
It's 3 to 6 inches.
He died in
Is that
December.
protected?
That's, yeah.
29th of December of 24, and his birthday was, let's see.
So
So we're getting more than that supposedly?
we'll get less, I think.
Good.
How
That's
much?
good.
3 to 6.
Less.
3 to 6?
Yeah.
Where is his
That's a lot
birthday?
of snow.
That is.
If you need anything cold,
I will do so. I should be fine. Tom Peter falls out my driveway, so.
Oh.
okay.
And,
You put your car in the garage?
no, I don't, because I remember I have a cat farm.
Oh.
And I had a cat off.
Cat farm.
I expanded into the garage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got 10 in there. Yeah.
Really? Something on your windshield when your car sits out?
I do sometimes. I probably should do that. That's a time saver, isn't it?
I would say it's small.
Well, as long as you have time to let it defrost, it's.
Just put it on your windshield wipers.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good idea.
100th birthday in October.
Well, my
October?
barn goes
Yep.
all track, and that's why I can't park the car in the garage.
What's up?
Yeah, I mean in the barn. I have those barn doors, and they're new barn doors. I mean, they're lightweight.
Born the 1st of October in 1924.
I don't know what it is.
Can we get on there together?
I don't know.
Talk about this one.
Well, maybe so, because Tom, and I'll just ask him, that we can arrange a time. Thank you.
Yeah.
Because he and Josh did it once before. It's an old track, but they're new doors, they're lightweight, well, they're lighter weight doors, okay?
Yeah.
They're not the big old heavy wood doors.
Or like
But,
5.
they're metal and framing, but, no, they did it back before they did the lawnmowing season. And so I just got the lawnmower in and out there, so I didn't need to pull anything bigger, you know?
We'll look at it.
Yeah. And real heavy stairs, like a push my car.
We'll look at it. And these are lubricated too.
It's an old track.
We'll work on it. We get more. Okay.
I agree.
Oh,
He sends it to me electronically.
Okay, welcome to First Universalist of New Madison on this first truly winter day, and it's going to get more wintry as we go, but considering global warming, it'll probably warm up next week again, so. Announcements.
I put on the, our email list, but remember our memorial service for, not ours, but the memorial service for Reverend Venus is at Cox Arboretum in Dayton. And
Next Sunday.
Next Sunday at 2 o'clock.
And
2 o'clock.
we're talking about going down to Old Scratch, which is in Middletown. It's on the way. It's only just a short distance from Cox. If the thing is at 2 and we get out of here at 11, if people are interested, we can meet at Old Scratch in Middletown. We'll give you the address or carpool down.
Is it in Middletown or is it?
I didn't think they were in Middletown, I thought they were in Centerville.
What is it?
Springville?
I was thinking
Centerville, maybe?
Yeah,
Centerville?
Centerville's a lot closer. It's closer to the Dayton Mall.
Yeah, but it's not that far from Cox, and I think it's on 48 too. So you're basically, if you go
Cox
on,
on 48?
I think it is.
I thought
I
it was
looked,
741 maybe, or Cox is.
I looked it up, and it didn't look like it was two. There's one in Troy, there's one there, and there's one in Beaver Creek.
Okay.
And Beaver Creek's way out of the way, and Troy's way out of the way, but that one was.
Well, if it's in Centerville, that'll be very close to Cox.
So by next week, we'll have a map and the address posted if people are interested in doing that. And there's no requirement for that. We just thought it might be interesting to do that. The main thing is Cox Arboretum at 2 o'clock. Let's see. We're going to take down the decorations after service. That'll take about 2 minutes, so there's really nothing anybody has to do. I'm going to take the garlands home. This garland goes in the box, and the tree I'll leave here, that goes in the box. So other than that, and I think, what's her name said she wanted the wreath back, so we'll leave it up here if she wants to pick it up.
We can put it in back in storage.
Yeah.
And she'll get it.
And she can
That's
pick.
Dee
Dee said she donated that some years ago and was interested in having it back. So I said, there's no problem with that. Don't wait till the church closes. If you want it back, get it now, because who knows what will happen. And I don't foresee that happening for quite a while. So in case anybody's interested, as long as we have the personnel, we've got more money than we know what to do with. So, all right, let's see. Extra decorations. Okay, that's all the announcements I have. This is going to be a service. Jimmy Carter has just died. His funeral is coming up. Interesting things going on about that. And Jimmy Carter got into a lot of trouble talking about Israel, which is what I had planned to talk about, was Israel and Palestine today. So we're combining the two of those together. We're combining Jimmy Carter's actions and thoughts on Israel, and then the developments. This was years and years ago that the Menachem Begin and Sadat peace process and the Oslo Accords were signed. What's happened since then, and how Carter's actions and thoughts affected it, and how appropriate they are even for today, what he said. And so appropriately, that's what I love about the music that gets picked is always very on tune and right down the line. We're going to hear Georgia for a prelude. harbor some latent prejudice against the southern states, the southern attitudes, the southern speech, Jimmy Carter was absolute and living proof. You can have a southern drawl, you can be a peanut farmer, and you can be the epitome of what humanity aspires to be, an honest, caring, open person who did the right thing no matter what it costs. And that is something that is becoming very, very rare in today's atmosphere. Someone who does the right thing no matter what the price that they have to pay. All right, our chalice lighting. We come to spiritual community this morning with many hopes in our hearts. The hope for inspiration, the hope for comfort, the hope for renewal in this time and space. May inspiration water our thirsty souls. In this time and space, may comfort blossom in the gardens of our hearts and bring us sweet relief. In this time and space, may renewal course through us as electric as a surge of energy, as serene as a nourishing meal, as contagious as joy, and bring us vitality and rejuvenation. May our time together honor all the hopes we hold within. May our time together bless us with the gifts of inspiration, comfort, and renewal. Let us worship together. And those words are by Rebecca Savage. Our opening hymn is 241, once again so appropriate in the bleak midwinter snowstorm coming today and single-digit colds next week. In the bleak midwinter, in this world of pain, where our hearts are open, love is born again. All right, our affirmation, a prayer against apathy. Nature is only ever at work. Take stock of the world around you, constantly in movement, each action suited to its end. Fire with its ferocity and veracity devours, ignites, it roars its presence and illumes the front. From it, people recoil. It singes and scars, but it also clears space. Some of us must act like fire. Water, With its elegant erosive powers, steady is the flow of its work. With direction, sustainability, a river is what nourishes and carves, not a typhoon which destroys indiscriminately and recedes and leaves people in drought. Some of us must act like water. Earth, which is with its food to eat and generative soil in its many forms of living companions to comfort us in times of solitude, of loss. Earth rejuvenates and holds us. Some of us must act like earth. Air, so integral to all of us, we must remind ourselves to notice our breath. No one of us lives without it. Not one of us is untouched by it. It cannot help but give and forgive. Single-minded, it knows everything as one. Some of us must act like air. May we each model in our natures the best in nature, eternally changing, knowing only movement and an urge to create life. Amen and blessed be. All right, children's story. How many of you are familiar with Last Week Tonight, John Oliver? It's on a pay channel, private HBO, something like that, but I get it off of the computer. Watch it once in a while, and I ran across this months and months ago on Israel, and it kind of meshed with what I wanted to talk about today about Jimmy Carter. So we're going to see a little insight. And this is Palestine today, just as one of the pictures that struck me.
There were around 250,000 settlers in the West Bank when it was not signed. There are currently around 700,000. And it's worth talking about the settlers themselves, because when you think of them, you may envision someone like the blundering guy you saw earlier, or hardliners on an ideological mission to claim the Holy Land in the name of the Jewish people. But that is not the whole picture. In fact, 70% of those who live in the West Bank are so-called quality of life settlers. And I will say, the way they describe their communities does make them seem very attractive.
Spend 10 minutes in a settlement today, and you sometimes feel that you could just as easily be in a New Jersey suburb. Clean roads, big houses, quality parks, good schools, close-by shopping, a university. You ask people why they moved out here, and instead of the original mission to push forward the Israeli state, you hear things like,
Very good education offer.
like not as the got a job.
We want to still have a bigger fight.
It's a great place to raise things.
We were looking for a Jerusalem suburb that we could afford that was a manageable community. The quality of life is so much better. It has nothing to do with politics.
Well, hold on. It has nothing to do with politics. I'm sorry, but it very much does. Just because it's a nice place to live doesn't make it any less illegal under international law. It's not like the Geneva Convention says the occupied capital shall not transfer parts of its unruly population into the territory it occupies unless there's like really convenient shopping and a super manageable commute to Jerusalem. Also, part of the reason settlements can be so pleasant is because the Israeli government wants people to move there. Life is massively subsidized in the settlements, with the government spending more per capita on things like education and infrastructure in there than it does within Israel itself. In recent years, Israel's housing ministry has even offered to subsidize apartments in the West Bank through a lottery system. The whole settlement project has been massively encouraged by the Israeli government to such a degree that it is hard to argue that living in one isn't a political choice. Building on stolen land is an inherently political act. It is also, by the way, copyright infringement, for what it's worth. Now, the Israeli government will say that it doesn't officially support all settlements. Its official line is there are two different kinds of legal, approved settlements and outposts created by rogue settlers that are illegal under Israeli law. But for the record, under international law, both of them are illegal. And also, Israel frequently offers all manner of resources to these so-called illegal outposts too, providing with military defense, access to public utilities, and sometimes even retroactively legalizing them. So, as this Israeli critic of the settlements points out, the line between the two types can get pretty blurry.
Settlement and outpost. What's the difference?
Well, usually someone refers to Israeli settlements which are officially approved
Okay, that stopped a little bit short, but that's all right.
Around 250,000.
The difference between, and then what we're going to talk about, this is what Jimmy Carter talked about, is Israeli settlements are basically illegal under international law. The Israelis are putting more and more Israelis into Palestinian territory, taking Palestinian territory from the Palestinians. Like he said, there's two different kinds. There's the official settlement that is approved by the government, which is still illegal, and then there's the settlers who go out and found their own outposts, which are illegal under Israeli law, but nobody ever removes them, and they are protected by the Israeli government. And you've seen the stories, and this is what some of what I've got pictures of, and I've shown you before. The Israelis picking on and attempting to drive out the Palestinians that are there, burning down and uprooting their olive groves, harassing the shepherds with their sheep. I showed you the picture a couple months ago of the Israeli settler who drove up with a machine gun and threatened the reporter and the Palestinian who actually lived on that ground and had been in his family for generations, and forced them off the ground. That is what we are talking about when we're talking about Palestine and Israel, and why the word apartheid comes into focus. Apartheid was basically founded or described in South Africa as the white South African, the Afrikaners, separated themselves and pushed the Afrikaners or the African natives into separate Bantustans, is what they called them, separate areas, made them have special passes, and we'll do a little bit of comparison between South Africa and Israel. We'll see how that goes. The first thing we need to do is joys and concerns. We'll keep Richard Venus family. They will be next week in their remembrance for Richard at Cox Arboretum. And I think they are dealing with it, and Richard dealt with his end untimely, or maybe timely considering the suffering he was going through with Alzheimer's. Very dignified all the way to the end, and an end that is admirable for all of us, and I think for his family was supported all the way through. Israel and Palestine, another 30 people were killed in an attack, not mostly, but women and children, and each time the Israelis say it was a Hamas leadership group or Hamas terror group, and we try to limit civilian casualties as much as we can. 46,000 Palestinians have been killed. Some, I'm sure, are Hamas fighters, but the majority are women and children who had nothing to do with it. That is basically against the rules of war, according to the Geneva Convention that everybody has signed. And Ukraine, we still have our sunflowers here for Ukraine. Korean, North Korean troops are fighting. The Ukrainians are very smart and very intelligent. They are sending leaflets in Korean to the Korean troops, offering them freedom if they want to desert. And they can have food, they can have a place to live. And I think that is having some effect on the morale of the Korean troops, which are being used basically as raw meat, as they say, just being fed into the fight. So with the upcoming administration change, things will be changing there. And I think everybody is holding their breath as to what's going to happen with that. Anything else?
Tim, I would just add, and many of you already know probably, North Korea is such a repressive regime that you were saying that the Ukrainians are offering free pass for deserters. Those deserters who do that, Russia will more than likely report that to North Korea, and the families of those individuals will be jailed, prisoned for life, and tortured.
Yes.
And that is probably a little known fact in the world of this adversity, a world of adversity, and something horrible to think about. But the whole thing, of course, war, they're using those individuals as you state, meat, is indeed tragic.
And the approach the Ukrainians are taking is in war, there are always surrenders. I mean, when your group is surrounded and you surrender. So it's questionable, we don't know if the Soviets are going to report to North Korea and the families will be punished. If you're killed in action or missing in action, they still punish your family, we don't know. And that's, I think, what they're trying to use as a cover or a shield, is to say they didn't actually just give up their weapons and walk across the line. They basically kind of disappeared during the fog of war or the smoke of combat. But as you are totally correct, they fight under duress, and the same thing goes on in the Soviet Union. If you escape, and the same thing happened during East Germany, during the time of the Berlin Wall. If you escaped and left East Germany, your family suffered repercussions. It wasn't physical torture, but it was loss of support as far as paperwork, as far as food coupons, as far as coupons to buy material goods, as far as housing. And that is something we need to watch as we approach the new administration. We've already seen what's happened with millions and millions of dollars being donated to the inauguration, actually literally millions of dollars at a time, from people who originally were opposed to Trump, and now that he has won, Bezos, Microsoft, all the big companies are donating money because they know that if they don't donate money, they will be charges and difficulties will be levied against them in the coming administration. It is blackmail right on the surface. I mean, they are buying support, and I'm sure you saw the report that the reporter, the cartoonist for the Washington Post, has resigned her position because she proposed a cartoon that had all of these billionaires, the owner of the LA Times, Bezos, owner of the Washington Post, on bended knee offering rings and bags of money to Trump. And the Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos, said, no, we're not publishing that cartoon. It offends our owner. And so she resigned her position. The problem is when people resign their positions and do not do this anymore, then that leaves the field clear for the people who do support this and who will do whatever is called for. That's the danger we're approaching as we go into the new administration, when the threat is to change the civil service from being a non-political job to only politically friendly people will get jobs in the civil service. That is the danger that we face.
It's like a can rolls over. And remember the tragedy of January 6th, and let that be a lesson for all of us. And I underscore the word all of us.
Yes, January 6th, and I've
seen
seen
the loss of life, the damage to property, historic, and mostly the compromise to the very institution of our Constitution and its electoral requirements.
the foundations of democracy, and you've seen the Congresswoman from Georgia has proposed making it a national holiday as a day of remembrance for those loyal and fighting against the illegal election of 2020. And this is what happened if you look at the history of the Soviet Union, China, any other repressive state. History changes, and I have a quote here somewhere, I think. There will come a time when the rich own all the media, and it will be impossible for the public to make an informed opinion. Albert Einstein, 1940. So we are still holding up. That's my little reading on against apathy. We need to stay aware. We need to be able to speak. We need to see what happens. Any other personal? Yes.
And what happened in New Orleans?
Oh yes. Oh we can't forget not only New Orleans, Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And did you see the information on Las Vegas? Both of these, the information that came out of the White House was our borders are porous and open and invaders are crossing the borders. Both of these gentlemen, or both of these sad people, are American citizens, both of them active military, one in the reserves and one an actual Green Beret. both confused about where their loyalties lie and what's going on. The Las Vegas one in particular, the more his writings are discovered, he is a Trump supporter and says the country is going down the wrong path, and we need more people, more billionaires running the country. And why he killed himself and blew himself up when he's a Trump supporter in front of the Trump Hotel in a Musk vehicle is a little confusing, and the reports we're getting are he even said in his report, he is doing this because of the crimes or the lives he has taken. He has PTSD, served in Afghanistan, many tours, and suffered, and as did the other gentleman, the other person who committed this crime and died. Were confused, they were alone, they were desperate. They wanted to go out in being noticed in their pain and their anguish, and they wanted to push that on to other people. These people are disturbed and they need help, but they are not immigrants. They are not from another country. They are American soldiers. And this is one of the questions they have that the military maybe is not ferreting out and finding people who are more than just activists. They are fanatics, and they are becoming mentally disturbed. And we've talked about this before. The suicide rate in the military is going up and up and up and up. And that is partially, and we've talked about this, when we went to a volunteer army from a draft army, you have people who are committed to service, but they're not committed to a balanced service. Their loyalty is sometimes questionable as to where they are going. So we're going way too much on this. Anything else? All right, one last candle for those thoughts, prayers, those hopes and dreams that you're not able to voice, but which maybe come to the surface in your dreams at night. All right, this is a picture of Jimmy Carter and Sadat and Menachem Begin. Sadat, as you know, was assassinated. Peace is not easy to do, and it is not easy to take the right way. And this is one of the things that I really admire about Jimmy Carter, was castigated during his service. He served from 77 to 81, 77 to 81, and was followed by Ronald Reagan, which was a completely different mindset. And he came after Gerald Ford, and we see this happening with the American public each time. Something happens, they had the Nixon things, they said we wanted somebody who's honest and simple and will tell us the right thing. And Jimmy Carter said, I will never lie to you, and I will always do the right thing. And in his mind, and if you look at through the lens of history, pretty much the judgment is he did not ever tell a lie, and he did the right thing. But he suffered because the American people, well, let me go into that as we go along. Palestine, Peace, Not Apartheid. That was his book. It was published in 2006. The pro-Israel pressure groups placed ads in the New York Times accusing Carter of facilitating those who pursue Israel's annihilation. They claimed he was blinded by an anti-Israel animus. The former president's decision to use the word apartheid no longer seems a stretch. This was in 2006. Indeed, today it seems to describe the reality on the ground as it is occupied in the West Bank. Carter didn't have a Jewish problem. We have a Carter problem. The American Jewish establishment has a Carter problem. This is what one of the Jewish commentators wrote in a Jewish paper in Israel. Halfway into his presidency, Jimmy Carter's back was against the wall. It was July '79, the height of the energy crisis, and the beleaguered president went on national television to deliver not a speech, but, as is Carter's wont, a kind of sermon. The address, called The Crisis of Confidence, was a challenge to the Americans to acknowledge personal failings that he believed were compounded into very real public problems. Remember, he wore a sweater. Most of you are old enough to remember this. He wore a sweater, said we need to turn our thermostats down to save money and not to waste energy. We need to to make the speed limit 55 miles an hour, to save gas. All of these things that he instituted to make the energy crisis better went against the American desire to let's just go over and invade Saudi Arabia and take that oil that we need so we can drive 80 miles an hour, so that we can turn our thermostats up to 85 degrees. That is partially what we're facing. Too many of us now tend to worship self-indulgence and consumption, said Mr. Carter. Human identity is no longer defined by what one does, but by what one owns. But we've discovered that owning things and consuming things does not satisfy our longing for meaning. That is a sermon that is true exactly at that time, and it is still true today. And you will hear conservative religious and political people say the same thing. They talk about Christmas as being too materialistic, and then Christmas comes in October, sometimes now in September. No matter how much we talk about, and we've talked about this before, we talk about the United States as the greatest country in the world. Our standard of living is the highest in the world, but our mortality, our rate of longevity is like 24th in the world. We don't have time for new mothers to be with their children. We don't have a time, whatever they call the mothering time, either for women or men. The way we treat our seniors, trying to stuff them into nursing homes with inadequate staff. We don't have free medical care. People who can't afford, and I told you this story of people who can't afford their surgery and the price they have to pay ahead of time, the down payment, don't get surgery, don't get elective surgeries, and that can kill people. People are actually dying from that. All right, the decades that have followed have shown that Mr. Carter had the diagnosis right. Materialism has become epidemic, endemic even. We mostly fail to ask ourselves one searching, overarching question: how much is enough? The sad thing is, Carter misread the nation. He thought we would look inside ourselves and find the answer. He had faith in America that we would find it in ourselves to do the right thing, to be the right people. His faith, evidently so far, has been misplaced, and it is proven to be even more so by the last election. Having, buying, and using more things, he warned us in 1979, and we made fun of his malaise sermon. We made fun of the peanut farmer come to the big city. We laughed at the man of faith who promised never to tell a lie and to do the right thing. We voted overwhelmingly for a showman who promised more things, more pleasure, more satisfaction with pride and power. And boy, have we doubled down on that. Bypassing the pretense of the American way, bypassing the pretense of religious morality, the shining city on a hill. Give us the lies, the cruelty, the greed, the deceit, the pompous posing, the preposterous proposals. Think about this. Canada and Greenland and the Panama Canal. Jimmy Carter was the one that did the treaty for the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal was in Panama. It was staffed by Panamanian people. It was built on Panamanian ground, and the Americans say, yes, many people died building the canal, implying that many Americans died. Americans were not the people who were building the canal. They were the engineers who stayed in the air-conditioned huts. The people building the canal were natives of South America, Central America, and even Mexico. They're the ones who died of typhoid and malaria. So anyway, Jimmy Carter said the Panama Canal belongs to Panama. They are more than able to run it and make it work, and they are doing so to this day. The reason the Panama Canal is in trouble, does anybody know why they're having trouble with the Panama Canal? Climate change has affected the rainfall amount in the country of Panama. The way the canal works is when they release water into the locks to raise the boats up, that water comes from a lake It's a reservoir at the top of the mountain in Panama. There's not been enough rain to keep that reservoir full, so they're running short of water, and now they have to let smaller boats in because they can't use the water to raise the boats up. So it's slowing the passage of the Panama Canal. The United States taking back control of the Panama Canal is not going to change how much water is falling in Panama. There's nothing you can do about that other than reversing climate change, and that's not going to happen anytime soon. Greenland, they are now even more, and I can't believe they're serious, but they keep talking about this, and maybe it's just a distraction to get people's minds, people like me who are saying, this is crazy, how can people talk about taking Greenland back from Denmark? I mean, what is the point of that? And Canada. Now we have the guy from the Shark Group or whatever, some kind of TV show, O'Murray or O'Leary or somebody who was a Canadian citizen, went down to Mar-a-Lago and said, yes, the Canadians are in favor of becoming a 51st state. I'm going to go up and negotiate with the Canadians, and we're going to have a European Union type thing where there won't be any passports and the Canadians will pay U.S. taxes. They did a little study in Canada, a public relations study. 6% of Canadians are in favor of uniting with the United States. 6%. So the fact that these people are living in a pipe dream and saying that they are going to take over Canada and Mexico and Greenland and Panama, is this the way Hitler started out in 1938 and 39, talking about Czechoslovakia and Poland and Russia and Belgium and France? So, basically, give me a break. Some facts. Surveys of first-year college students every year. The percentage who named being well off financially as an important goal doubled from 1967 to 2019. Those who wanted to develop a meaningful philosophy of life, wanted their life to mean something and to be something, decreased by half. Why? Liberal arts, including language arts, English, history, and philosophy, are being stricken from college catalogs. They're not being taught. Why? Because you don't make money as a history major. You don't make money as an art major. You don't make money as a philosophy major. Why did they have liberal arts in the first place? Anybody want to hazard a guess?
It's an education.
An education that teaches you how to think. Liberal arts teaches you or tries to teach you how to be a person who understands their position in the world, who understands the world as a one large unit, who makes you a global citizen. And the important thing, and this is where our industrial leaders used to come from. This is where the leaders of giant corporations used to be well-rounded, used to have an interest in the arts. Even the mega millionaires from times past, Carnegie built libraries, Rockefeller built museums. These people knew that there was something more to life than just making money. Now we have people like Elon Musk, whose only goal in life seems to be instituting totalitarianism around the world. He has just supported the Nazi party, the neo-Nazi party in Germany on his ex-Facebook thing or whatever. And the Germans are upset about that. He wants the guy in prison in England for starting race riots. He wants him freed from prison. The world is headed in a really peculiarly strange direction. So, not even in the ground, and the same harpies are circling with recycled accusations of anti-Semite and goody two-shoes. All the attacks that Jimmy Carter suffered in the 70s, they're all coming back on Fox News right now. You can hear the same things about being anti-Israel and anti-Semite. These people are not satisfied with living lives of conspicuous consumption. They feel compelled to trash the memory of a humble farmer who did his best and never lied. Quite a contrast with the persona that is presented to us today by these people. In any event, because of the death of President Jimmy Carter, the flag may, for the first time during an inauguration of a first president, be at half-mast. Nobody wants to see this. No American can be happy about it. Let's see how it plays out. Make America great again. Who said that?
Trump?
Yeah, who would say make America great again?
Trump?
Trump is complaining that the flag is going to be half-staffed during his inauguration and says that's not right. I don't want it half-staffed. This is a standard thing for any president who dies, is that the flag goes to half-staff for 30 days. And what can you say?
Who's gonna override that?
It's this. We've talked about this before. It used to be the humble American, Gary Cooper, whatever. It used to be the thing your parents taught you to look up to. Be honest, take responsibility for your actions, be humble. Don't be somebody who goes out and grabs the glory. We used to look down on people like that and said there's something wrong with them. Now we're electing them president. In Suffolk County in New York on Long Island, the Republican county commissioner, county executive has refused to put the flags at half-staff. We don't know if they will eventually get there, but because he's a Republican, he's not going to honor the death of Jimmy Carter. These are the people who tell you that the office of president is what's important, and the president cannot be sued or cannot be held liable. Here's a guy who's been convicted 34 times of felonies who's going to be the president of the United States. And we're supposed to honor the office of president, except once again, the hypocrisy is just monumental. It's unbelievable. All right, as the former president's health deteriorated and he withdrew from public view, his foundation, the Carter Center, upset many Israelis when it called for a ceasefire after the 7th of October Hamas attack by quoting his 2002 Nobel Peace Prize speech, "We will not learn to live together in peace by killing each other's children." We will not learn to live together in peace by killing each other's children. The Carter Center warned that collective punishment and the murder of civilians was contrary to international law, a warning that looks prescient now that Israel's Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has been indicted for war crimes alongside his former defense minister and the Hamas military leader, Mohammed Daif. Both of these sides have been indicted for war crimes because both sides target innocent civilians. It doesn't matter that Israel is a small country, ostensibly a democracy. They have the same responsibilities to not ape what has happened in the past. Maybe Justify will search checkpoints. This is some defense, separate defense from apartheid. I'm going to go through a couple lists here. Why, when they say apartheid, what apartheid consists of in Israel? Medical emergencies. There are separations and checkpoints all along all the roads in Palestine. And medical emergencies are dying at these checkpoints. If a woman comes who's giving birth, they will not let her through. They're only allowed through for 1 hour a day, 3 days a week. If an ambulance pulls up and needs to get to a hospital, which there are no hospitals in Palestine anymore, they've all been destroyed, the Israeli troops will not let that ambulance go through, and people are dying at these checkpoints. This looks to me, and I went through the history and looked at the reprisal system the Germans set up during World War II. If a German soldier was killed by partisans, by the civilians in a town in France or in Belgium or in Czechoslovakia or in Russia or in Poland, the Germans made it known that 10 civilians would be killed for every German soldier that was killed. And they went through and massacred entire villages, entire populations of people. The same thing, the Germans were more methodical. That's the point I'm making. The Israelis don't keep count. They just keep shooting, burning, and harassing Palestinian homes and cars. This is called the price tag assault. And we had this lady here, I had a vision of it, but it shut off too soon. Price tag assault is when an Israeli citizen is driving through Palestine and their car is hit with rocks, or an Israeli citizen is shot or killed at a bus stop by a Palestinian terrorist. One Israeli is killed. Price tag assaults are, and this lady came out and said, we don't care who it is, any Palestinian, just like the Germans said, any civilian is a target. They will take out 10 or 20 or 30 Palestinians in reply. The idea being, and this goes to the conservative mind thought, if you have to suffer for every person that you kill, if 10 of your people are going to die, then you won't do it anymore. The death penalty has never worked. It hasn't worked in the American justice system. When you tell somebody that if you kill somebody, you're going to die, people are dying right and left. The murder rate is going up and up. More kids are dying today with guns than are dying from any other reason. People are still killing people. Threatening to kill them in return is not working. All right, a list of what's happening with, well, let's even skip the list. I've gone on too far already. We'll talk about this in the future again. Let's see, I gave you the Einstein quote.
Yeah.
So, and that's referring back to where we are politically. All this stuff comes together, it all swirls around, but it all comes out basically in the wash. One thing is a thing that leads to another. The Las Vegas thing, what happened to that? His PTSD was not solved by what went on in the country. It's made worse by the people pushing false narratives and pushing false news, and pushing things about how the country is overrun. The crime rate, if you look at the actual statistics, crime has been going down in the last 10 years. Murder rate, the only thing that's gone up is the theft of Kia cars, because they have some kind of weird thing about you can bypass their ignition lock. So 12-year-old kids are stealing Kia cars even in Dayton. But every other crime has gone down. And yet we are told by our politicians that the Haitians are eating dogs. That's just one example. It goes on and on.
Tim, as we face this next week with the funeral continuing, obviously, and
Yes.
the mourning period continuing, what are we most likely to hear in terms of most often stated accomplishments or tributes to Jimmy Carter? What are we likely to hear?
The peace program is one of the, between Sadat and Begun. The Oslo Accords, which have been totally ignored. The Oslo Accords basically set up the two-state solution. And if you talk to thoughtful people, if you talk to Jeff from Roberta's son, if you offer the Palestinians their own state where they have their own governance and they have their own control, then maybe, and the other thing you have to do is free them from Hamas, because Hamas was not elected. They were elected as a minority, and then they basically by brute force took over. Kind of the same thing that's happening in Haiti. You can't stand back and say to a country, you have to do whatever you want to do, but we're not going to help you. And in Haiti, they sent in the Kenyans police force, but they only sent in like 1,000 people. Haiti needs at least like 10,000. The gangs are shooting down airplanes at the airports. Have you seen that? You can't even land the plane at the Haitian airport in Port-au-Prince now because the gangs are shooting at the airplanes. These countries are degenerating into just nothing. So you have to have something to enforce the rule of law. That's what the UN is for, and that's what the Carter Center proposed, was a peacekeeping force between the Palestinians and the Israelis. Just like in many other conflict areas, the blue helmets would keep the Palestinians from attacking the Israelis, and they also would keep the Israelis from attacking the Palestinians. There's things on the John Oliver show. The Israeli settlers have built settlements up on the top of the hills, and the Palestinians in their towns and villages down farther down the hill, they have to put chicken wire across the top of all the streets because the Israelis throw rocks and bottles and trash down onto the streets. They just their lives are, of the Palestinians are a life of insult all the way along. So it looks hopeless. It really looks hopeless. And now even a minority of the Israelis are not in favor of a two-state solutions. So what happened to the democracy, what happened to the faith of the people who suffered under the Holocaust? They have become their oppressors. That's why they talk about apartheid, and that's why apartheid is becoming more and more the fit. Sorry, anything else?
Domestically, did his policies, as a result of necessity, having lived through the 70s, did they make a difference in terms of energy pricing, energy marketing, energy supply? Did they have any impact at all, aside from creating a general awareness that fossil fuels are indeed limited?
He started the Green Revolution. He put solar panels on the roof of the White House and started pushing that. He also basically increased the amount of public lands that were taken for protection, basically national forests and national parks. He pushed that quite a bit, but he didn't complete, but he started the idea that the government needs to support green revolution, needs to support being supportive of the environment and trying to decrease. The whole thing about wearing a sweater and driving at 55 miles an hour was to decrease our dependence on foreign oil. We started fracking, and now we are basically exporting oil, but fracking is a limited resource. That's not going to go on forever, and we're going to be back around to the other side. Right now, solar, wind power is cheaper than oil and coal, and it's actually cheaper than nuclear. And Ohio has a personal experience with that. We just went through the first energy bribery scheme where the legislature of Ohio approved subsidies and approved an increase. The price you're paying in your electric bill is much higher because we are subsidizing the coal plants on the Ohio River and the nuclear plants, which are more expensive to run than solar and wind. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. If you look at the economics, if you talk to the economists, then you need to go for renewable power. And what we're talking about with the coming administration is the reduction in subsidies, a reduction in support for green power, and the increase for drilling for oil. Doesn't make any economic sense. So, but anyway, Carter was very visionary in that. But I guess the problem was Carter said, "I expect the American people to be good Christians and do the right thing," and they're not being good Christians and they're not doing the right thing. So can we revert to that? We used to be that kind of a country. We used to be, in the 60s, when we found out what we were doing with segregation, we passed laws and said, we're not going to do that anymore. And of course, then they started with private schools, where they were still segregated, but they were segregated because it was a private school. All we've done is extend that. Now the private school is in a computer school that you don't even attend school.
Taxpayers support it.
But the taxpayers support it more and more, and now they want the government, the legislature wants the taxpayers to pay not only tuition, but to pay a bonus to people who want to give actual cash, not even pay it to the school they're going to, but just give the parents cash to spend how they want. So it gets, yes.
My wife and I are going to be virgins through the next 4 years.
Well, and that's what I keep talking about, no apathy. And Derek and I go round and round, and remember the last time Derek was here, he talked about how, he still loves his partner and things are going to be good. I'm not saying that the world is going to die with their wings blown off and crash into a decent guy who came to the Oregon district and said, we're going to do something about people with automatic weapons coming into public areas in Ohio and shooting people up, and made a promise of that on the spot at that time. 2 weeks later, after all the political pundits and the party people and the money people got to him, he completely forgot whatever he said about that. Governor DeWine said, you can't keep trans children from getting help. They need help. As soon as they put pressure on him, that he folded on that too. He's a perfect example of what's going on, and this is what happened when I try to compare to what's happening now to what happened in Germany. the Germans are not bad people. They're not nasty people. They're not racist. But they were overwhelmed. And if you saw the movie that I told you about, they were overwhelmed by a party that took power by force. In other words, the Reichstag fire happened, and it was, nobody knows for sure, but it was probably set by the Nazis. And then they had their excuse to declare martial law. We're already hearing people saying that if there's another January 6th uprising, then we will declare martial law and all of our public freedoms will disappear and the military will be in charge. And we're already hearing who's going to be in charge of the military. If we go back and look at the Project 2025, it's pretty scary when you get down to it, because the idea is if you don't swear a loyalty oath to the president, not to the Constitution, but to the president, you're going to be forced out of your job. They're talking about
monarchy, though.
exactly a totalitarian government. They're talking about arresting General Miley, who was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, because he opposed the president, the previous president, and some of his things. They're talking about arresting him now, 4 years later.
For what crime?
For opposing the president. There's no real crime. They're talking about arresting Nancy Pelosi. They're talking about arresting, what's her name from Wyoming?
Liz
Cheney.
Liz Cheney.
For what crime?
For investigating the January 6th thing.
Investigation isn't a crime.
It is what they're saying is it was all fake and false, and all those pictures of the rioters beating people up are all fake, and they were FBI plants that did that.
Why did 60 of 61 court cases rule insufficient evidence?
You're using facts. You can't use facts with these people.
Okay, thank you. I just thank you. That sums it all up.
Yes.
That's cool, Bill, that's cool.
I'm sorry I couldn't resist.
This is the ridiculousness of it. It's funny, it's ridiculous, but even a cartoonist who tries to show rich people bending knee and handing Trump money, these are billionaires. Billionaires, like Einstein said, they run the world.
They do.
And they're running the world into the ground. They're running it backwards. George Soros just got American Presidential Freedom Award for trying to educate people and support democracy. And you know he's been castigated
Well, a couple years ago, he got a bomb in his mailbox.
yeah, he's been demonized by the right wing all the way along. So this is going to go on and on and on. So it's time for the offering.
Fish.
Fish, yes, first Sunday, so fish as well. If you have something, share it. If you need something, let us know.
Keep your shelf available. I'm stalking it. I'll put some here now.
That's the offering, yeah.
That's for us.
Our final hymn is 83. Where am I? Yes, 83. Winds Be Still. Right. And extinguishing the chalice is our calling in the world. We've come to the end of our service, but not our calling in the world. We close our time together with humble reminder that justice and equity are our spiritual practices to embrace each day, every day. We are blessed to be the embodiment of what is possible. When justice and equity ground us in all that we do, may we go forth with the light and warmth of our chalice in our hearts until we are together again. This also is by Rebecca Savage. And our postlude is Smile. We leave our candle lit as is normal for the families of those who perished in New Orleans, senseless, and the family and the relatives of the man who basically killed himself in Las Vegas, and for all the other soldiers who are suffering PTSD. Our thoughts and prayers are with them. Also, I need to light a candle for Rick. Rick Mohamus was here as a speaker some years ago, and that's Margie. She's the horse owner, her husband. He had a gallbladder attack, and they took him down, did surgery, put drains in. He was having trouble with pain, went back again, came back home again. Now he's back in the hospital again. One of the drains came out, and he has an abscess. So he's having a terrible time. Tara's going down to see him this afternoon. Our last slide, our horse slide, this is in honor and remembrance of all the firefighters, not only here in New Madison, but all over the country and all over the world. Firefighters, think about the firefighters in Ukraine trying to fight drones crashing down into their cities. Think about the first responders in Palestine who actually were targeted by the Israelis. 22 first responders were killed in their building, their first response building where the ambulance was, targeted by the Israelis and killed. This is 1903. This is what it's like to be a firefighter in 1903. The reason I show that is You notice those horses coming out of the stalls? They knew right where to go. The harnesses were hanging on ropes. They walked right into the harness and they were harnessed and ready to go. And you notice before they even left, they were jumping. They were ready to go. Okay, that finishes our service for today. Donuts are there and coffee.
Just changes, I have one visit station in Illinois, Madison.
Yeah.
I come down the pole.
Did you?
Oh, yeah. Headquarters.
Yep, that was the good old days.
That was the old days. I love it.
And the house is burned down with me.